Hello and welcome to the Nerfhammer podcast. I'm Rowan.
And I'm Cameron.
So, Cameron, what have you been playing this week?
Well, after your amazing opinion on Tribes, I decided to download it, which was really quite simple and quick, by the way, and I've been playing Capture the Flag, which is, though I've never really been a fan of Capture the Flag, this is completely different as jetpacking across a map whilst being able to go at like 200 miles per hour and hitting, or unfortunately in my case, mostly walls, is quite fun.
Yeah, really actually enjoying the Catch the Flag because it's a lot more sort of depthy, I find, than most of the sort of Capture the Flag games because everyone sort of fulfills a role.
Well, everyone tries to.
So, what sort of role did you try and play?
I was capping a lot actually. I've never really been one for being able to play defensive very well, and also, unfortunately I can't really unlock the technician at the moment, which is something I wanted to bring up. Which is you start off with one of each of you have a heavy, you have a medium, and you have a light, and they all move accordingly in speed. And I've been capping a lot on the light because it's so much easier on the Pathfinder. I was about to say Pathfinder. As I can go so much quicker. Whereas I think I needed like more of a defensive role if I got into it. But I like running incredibly quickly.
Yeah, I generally find, and it's probably the intent, that the light classes generally sacrifice, like in terms of firepower and health, they just go for sort of all-out speed, which sort of gives them the preference for sort of capturing flags. Obviously, medium classes I generally find can fit into most roles, and then heavy classes just go all-out firepower. Can be good fun.
Well, honestly, I think that you're missing out the soldier here, as the soldier is, though it's a medium, I think it's more levelled on the destructive side than on the speedy side.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've mostly actually been playing the heavy classes myself. I really do enjoy how fast you can go, although, as you said, that generally ends up with me going very quickly into a wall. But I've actually been quite enjoying the heavy classes, so things like Doombringer for sort of stay-at-home defense, or you can use them for aggression because they've got quite a lot of firepower, which actually plays really quite nicely. Feels very balanced between the sort of classes.
It's a very good game, and I honestly suggest it to anyone. I think if you've played any of the Unreal tournaments, and I'm not sure really, do you think it's a sort of a play-on from Quake a little as well?
I don't know, I've sort of heard it being compared to Quake, but I don't really feel that it plays that way, apart from obviously it's a lot faster than sort of most of the modern sort of shooters that you get at the moment. But I don't know, I think Tribes, ever since sort of its release in 1998, has always sort of had its own little genre. It's not quite sort of the realism of Modern Warfare or that sort of thing, but it's completely different from something more abstract like Quake. It plays very nicely.
Well, it's been doing very successful, not just in our opinions. It's got over 800,000 registers now, which is, I think, very impressive for this sort of game, as it's not one of those massive franchises like, as we say, Call of Duty or Battlefield. It's one of those smaller, indie games, which is just being blown into amazingness by its really creative side. I didn't play the original Tribes. It had the sort of same game mechanics.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to the sort of old Tribes games, partially also enforced by a lot of the Tribes veterans have actually been sort of commenting on the forums and making sure they get it right. But I've heard it being said a lot that the old Tribes are apparently a lot faster and the maps are a lot more open, whereas I think Hi-Res are going for a sort of a smaller, not necessarily more casual. I mean, the game is really skill-based. With everything being projectiles, there's no room for sort of aimbotters or point and click, as some people refer to it. So it plays a little bit slower than some of the old Tribes games, but it still plays very nicely. I really do enjoy it in that aspect. And obviously the graphics are a huge bump up from sort of the more boxy sort of models that you would have got in, say, Tribes 2, which you can actually still play with Tribes Next, by the way, if you're interested. You can hop over there, download it, and go and actually play the old Tribes 2. I think there's still a couple of people playing, but I don't think there's a very big community sort of left for it. I think most of them are sort of shuffling over to Tribes Ascend at the moment, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's only very few things that I find to be an issue with this game, and none of them are even that major. I mean, the only thing which I brought up very quickly was the mouse on the settings screen or home screen when you're not actually fighting is incredibly horrible. As you agree, don't you?
Yeah, it's actually really strange because the game itself, especially if you sort of lower a couple of settings, its recommended settings are occasionally a little bit high. I generally prefer FPS over looks, but I mean the game itself runs pretty smoothly. I don't have any problem with sort of mouse drag, but for some bizarre reason, their menu screens just have a lot of mouse drag. So clearly something bizarre going on behind the scenes there.
Well, the only other thing I was going to bring up with it was just amazing amount of people who put down like claymore mines, which always just seem to be my downfall. As though I can see the mines there and I'm running incredibly quickly. Most people, I'm not sure if people even know my name because I've only been playing for like I think 2 days now. I'm not sure if they really seem to shoot that much at me. They just throw down these bloody mines because I'm very much one of those people who hovers along the ground more than just uses skiing to its full advantage, which I'm trying to get out of the habit of, but it still manages to kill me every time with these bloody mines.
Yeah, skiing is actually a really interesting mechanic, actually. I think which probably the main thing that sets tribes apart. I mean, the two things that set it apart are probably the projectile weapons, which is a really nice change of pace, that they're almost all projectiles, and the skiing mechanic, which, whilst it doesn't sound that tricky to use, getting it just right so you sort of maintain your speed and get around, it's very useful, but it does take a lot of getting used to.
One thing that's really nice though is the fact that though all the maps are different, you really do get into the maps very quickly. And 15-minute matches, which I'm not sure if that's default or not, but most of them have seemed to be. It makes it so you don't have enough time to just sit down and go, okay, well I'm going to snipe for a while and then I'm going to go and maybe try and run around. It's always every death you pick something new to do and you have to do it very quickly, which is, again, as you said, very nice. And death only has a penalty of I think 4 seconds at max on most of the capture the flags.
Yeah, I generally find that, and you can either sort of die and go, okay, why did I die? What role isn't being performed by my team? So is the defense weak? Is the offense weak? Or the way I prefer to play is I sort of pick a role and I work on it that match. And sorry, continue.
I think it depends on what you're really looking at in the match, because I mean I remember when you bought the sniper, that was what you focused on that match, even though classes weren't being balanced as much in that match.
Yeah, they don't actually enforce a class limit, which I think is interesting, because in some games they do, simply because too much of one class can be overpowered, but they clearly don't see that as being an issue with their game, especially seeing as if, for example, you have a team of all, for example, Doombringers or all Pathfinders, it just won't work for your team, so it does actually sort of require an element of teamwork, and a lot of FPSs sort of claim to be team-based games, but it's just team deathmatch, so having one that actually, it really rewards you for playing as a team. The difference between everyone sort of going Rambo style and the difference between people actually picking a role and working for their team, it really shows.
Well, one of the things that I think is happening at the moment, especially on the matches I'm playing, is the opposite team always goes with snipers. And, I hate claymores. It's just the bane of my game. Flying doesn't seem to help either. They're just as tricky. But yeah, there's a really nice diverse set of maps. I don't mean just in terrain where I can be playing on a barren wasteland of ice in one to a lava-filled sort of Star Wars Episode 3 Mustafar sort of setting. It's just you get a different feel for each map, and I honestly think that there are very few there actually isn't a map which I dislike. Every map is playable and enjoyable, and for every reason under the sun, really.
Yeah, I also find it's a very satisfying game. They've definitely crafted that with sort of the unique sounds for things like hitting people in midair and killing them like that, or just sort of all the accolades and the way they make it very clear that you've achieved something, even for a new player. I found, I mean, I was doing terribly obviously when I began the game, but everything I did achieve, it was very clearly laid out. It went, well done, you've achieved this. It really put emphasis on sort of progress and sort of your own sort of advancements. The only thing I think that's missing in that regard is perhaps a little thing at the end of the map, maybe telling you that if you've like done better than your average, so for example on score, or if you've managed to achieve a lot of maybe artillery strikes or flag captures, might be an interesting sort of mechanic to put in there.
Well, I think that's a great idea for the game, but I think that this game is one that I think will be constantly moving forward, in my opinion, as I try out different things, unlock different classes, and it's a game where I can go and I can say, today I have managed to, dodge a claymore or something, and that's something which I hold with me for like about 5 minutes whilst I'm playing until I get killed by another claymore.
Well, I think it really sort of reflects on the whole sort of attitude by the community sort of behind the Tribes games, which they're generally a friendly bunch, as friendly as you can be on an FPS, but the attitude is very much sort of self-motivation, self-improvement. So it's not just sort of going to hold your hand, it's very much pushing you to sort of increase your own sort of skills and take an appreciation for what actually you can do, which is really nice.
Yeah, so definitely a skill-based game, not just an aim-botting sort of point-and-click, as you put it, as you can't just sit there looking around, standing in one position, because if you do, you're just going to get slaughtered. I mean, even snipers try and fly, and that's something which is, I think it's very impressive, because I haven't got a hang of sniping at all yet in this game.
Yeah, I find sniping is either horribly ineffective if you can't aim, so me, or if you can aim, it can be very, very powerful.
I'm yet to find someone who can aim without putting down a claymore.
Alright, I think we should take a brief break there. We shall be back shortly after this. Okay, and we're back. So, recent news that's actually been floating around in the gaming community on off various websites. Let's start with first things first then. So, there has actually been a God of War, which some people might remember that game. Not too old, but was very popular. Sort of very interesting take in terms of story on the idea of actually playing sort of one of these macho sort of kill everything characters that you normally play, but then giving it this sort of, I'll briefly spoil this. If you haven't played the end of the game and still want to, pause it now and skip ahead a minute. But the end of the game actually, it takes you down and it sort of basically asks you, is this really worth continue going on with your rage? And sort of shows you how futile it's been, sort of the rage over sort of this. Well, it's effectively a Greek tragedy. It's very well done actually. I think the Extra Credits guys actually did a piece on the sort of story for that. But yeah, there was a sort of brief teaser clip which included some footage of multiplayer, which is going to be in the prequel, so that should be coming out sometime soon.
I'm not one of those people who's ever played this game, and I'm very interested if you can tell me more about it.
I don't actually have all that much more news on it right at the moment. Was there any other? Pardon me. So was there any other interesting news apart from sort of that brief little tease we got there?
Well, I think that the Halo 4 live action thing is going to be very interesting, as it's going to be something which is going to take, I think, Halo to a new level, besides maybe the addition of 3D, which they've been talking a little bit about.
So I haven't actually heard of this. What are they actually going to do? So some kind of Halo live action? How's that going to work?
I don't know, I was hoping you could take over there. Can we redo that part?
Okay, right. They're actually going to release a small series of live action shorts. They haven't actually confirmed how much this is actually going to link in with the canon of the final game, but it's hopefully planned to sort of build up excitement towards the release of the next installment in the Halo franchise, which is actually incredibly popular, even though there's only a few games sort of in the series. But yeah, they're planning to sort of introduce that. And Halo 4, which this whole series is actually building up for, is actually going to be released on November the 6th. later this year, which is the current planned date. They might push that back, but we'll have to wait and see. That should be really interesting. Hopefully they'll actually sort of push a little bit of innovation, hopefully not falling into sort of the current trap, which I think of a lot of modern games have sort of managed to slip into. So, sort of the idea that there's no such. A lot of people say there's not anything better than the second in a series. I don't know. What's your opinion on sequels?
I think that Halo 2 was definitely better than Halo 1 in the sense, or unless you count in the remastery, as, you know, not just graphics, which is always something which most people bring up in games, is a sequel will have to have better graphics because, well, it's a sequel, it's come out later in time. But, yeah, I think Portal was one that we disagree over about sequels, as I prefer Portal 2, whereas you're one of the people who thinks about Portal 1 as being the be-all and end-all of the Portal series.
I think the main thing with the Portal series, well, I mean, Portal 2 was very, very good, don't get me wrong, and I definitely love the inclusion of multiplayer. I have to say, whoever came up with the levels for that, praise be to you, your IQ must be off the charts. I wouldn't have thought of some of those. But I have to say, the first one felt like a very well done puzzle game with a nice story behind it. The second one, as I've said before, feels like a nice story with a good game behind it, which sounds like a bizarre sort of comparison, but in a couple of instances, I won't spoil it for those of you who haven't played the games yet, but they do actually put the sort of story first in some instances of the Portal 2, which in some cases actually felt immersion breaking, which I really wasn't that pleased with, especially seeing how much they'd really push sort of the well done immersion and sort of storytelling through play that they'd done in the first game. But again, all opinion.
I'm a sucker for the story in in Portal 2, as it wasn't just the comedy, which I think honestly is amazing in Portal. It was just, I think it flowed better as a game, as it wasn't just the puzzles I was interested in that, like, yeah, completing the puzzles, as though I didn't get stuck as much in Portal 2, I found it harder in some senses to put it down than Portal 1.
Yeah, talking of Portal 2, actually, recently Valve have actually released a short video clip called, I think it's Perpetual Portal, or something along those lines. I'll go and find the proper name for it later. But essentially, it's going to be a level editor, which normally you'd go, level editors there for sort of really advanced people who spend hours at a time sort of building these things. I mean, I know because I've tried to build various levels for different games, and it can be a little bit horrible to do, but actually taking a look at this footage, it looked really, really simplistic, but not in a bad sense. It's got all the functionality of the game, but put into a very easy to use and also very nice looking level editor. It's not sort of one of these clunky 3D programs. It actually looks really pleasant to use, actually, so I'll be really excited to see sort of what kind of content they're going to be pushing out. Are you planning to mess around with the level editor at all?
I'm planning to mess around with it a great deal, as though I'm not as skilled as you in coding, I have appreciated the amount of time that people have put into this sort of game, because it's not just about, like, you know, making it look shiny. This game was one of the best games I've ever played because it wasn't catering to the lowest denominator, which some FPSs do. And yeah, I'm hoping that there'll be a great sense of, like, you know, community will come from this, as I'll be able to go on and there'll be, like, you know, maybe top 5 hardest levels or something, and you go in there with a friend and you have to defeat these, as it'll be one of those things that, like, you know, maybe Valve, I'm not sure who will lead this community, will go, this is the hardest level. It will honestly be like a couple of hours work, and not just in length, but I mean in thinking time, as this has so much more potential, as there's going to be so much imagination that people can put into this, and I'm really hoping to see amazing things from this, as if there isn't something really great coming out of this, I think it's going to be a very big disappointment, and it's not going to be like, you know, their fault. It's going to be our fault for not taking hold of this enough. And yeah, Steam, it's going to be very interesting how that works across.
I have to say, nod to Valve once again for pre-planning everything. I mean, occasionally when they release things, they go, "That's a nice feature." So, for example, the way they did the Manco store to try and mess around with sort of how microtransactions and things like that would work. And you sort of saw that go up, and you went, "Oh, that's cool." And then they released, I think it's Dota 2 with microtransactions, where they'd already had it out, messed around with it. They didn't have to reveal anything about the game or what business model they were going to use, but they've already tested it and seen that we like it. And then again, you go and take a look at the way they're handling the Steam Workshop, which is their method for allowing people to create new items, mess around with that sort of thing, and propose it to Valve to release. And guess what they're using to put the Portal 2 levels up? The Steam Workshop.
Oh, this is going to be interesting then. I'm not one of those people who's really used the Steam Workshop enough, I think, and this is going to be one of those things where I'm either going to be in love with this even more, or I'm going to hate it, as it's very hit and miss for me.
But it's quite interesting to see how Valve have sort of carefully managed to get everything all set up and ready before they even have to go. So, yeah, props to Valve for actually making sure they've got the quality there.
I think we need to take a brief break and I'll be back in a moment. See you soon, guys. How did I mess up see ya? Bloody hell.
And welcome back, guys. Right, something interesting I've heard floating around the internet, which probably means I'm about 2 weeks late, but hey ho. Have you heard anything about this? It's called Pottermore, I think it is. I was never particularly into the Harry Potter stuff, but it sounds interesting. Some kind of website?
It was released incredibly badly back in July by, which means you're more than about 2 weeks late, by the author of the Harry Potter series, J.K. Rowling, as a unique online experience, which really annoyed me a lot because that's just a website. Anything can be an unique online experience. This, what you're listening to now, audience, is a unique online experience, as it's unique, it's online, and hopefully you're experiencing something, let it be good, hopefully. And yeah, it was really horribly, and it was put into like a unique set of people will get like an invitation and stuff, and only the selected few will be allowed into Hogwarts and, you know, whatever. And then this slowly became bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it sort of just fell out of the universe really for a while, and then it was re-released again in a big fashion as everyone can be in. And, you know, being a sucker for the Harry Potter series of who I am, I signed up and I did the stuff up until you get sorted, because that's the main thing for me. And, you know, I got my wand and stuff, and I got sorted into Slytherin, and I was really happy with that. And it's a very good game. And actually, no, it's not a very good game. It's a very good series of mini games, which took a lot of time to get up to the point where I wanted, which made it incredibly tedious at points. As I think it would be a better site and you get more traffic. And I know they're probably not listening to this, but you get more traffic if you were to just put on a side thing, do you really want to sign up, or do you just want to get sorted? Because though it breaks a lot of immersion, I think it's just better to have an official, he puts in closed brackets, like, you know, way to be able to tell which house you're in, because that many games been floating around the internet since I think Harry Potter first came out in book, because really that's, I think, what most people care about. Your wand and stuff is just, it's just something you have to do along the way to be able to get to this point. And I haven't played on from there, or, you know, read on from there, because it's meant to be following the books exactly, because I know how it ends. I've read the books, I've watched the films. There's nothing really going to be surprising in there.
So, as you said, obviously, it clearly had a bit of a bad start as it ducked that far under the radar, but you said something about getting your wand. How does that work? Does it just give you a wand, or do they have sort of any effects? What kind of stuff do you do the wand? What do you find out about it?
Well, getting a wand, as I'm hoping actually we might be able to sort you in. If you haven't done this, we'll make you an account and we'll upload the video of it, which is basically you go in, you say, are you, like, one of the first questions, which I found to be kind of weird because it gives away a lot about the wand and how it's chosen, is, are you normal height for, you know, as a person? And unfortunately, me being me, I had to put tall, and, you know, then my wand is bigger than some of the friends I know who are shorter than me who have got that, and that gives away a lot. And then basically it's sort of a weird personality test that you put through, which I find, though it keeps in line with the Harry Potter fan base, as, you know, the wand, you don't pick the wand picks you. it just feels like sort of stupid that you have to put this in as if you're talking to the wands, saying I'm this sort of person, like speed dating, in comparison to just telepathy as
Speed
such.
dating your wand. That has room for all kind of inappropriateness.
That could be a great name for a band if anyone wants to do that. Speed dating wands. But then
Have to
then
start
later.
the fire.
Actually, let's leave that sort of innuendo section. Let's just move straight on. I think that although I'm one of those people who thinks that everything's intertwined on this website, as I went through missing most of the content trying to get to the point where I was sorted. I don't think it has any effect when you get your wand on what house you're sorted into, though. The level of questions they ask you going into your house is mind-blowing, as it has one of the most degrading questions ever, which I'll basically just tell you about, which is basically you go on there and you go, like, it goes, if you could have a power, like effectively what's a superpower, what would it be? And you have something like classics of like super strength or invisibility, but then it just rolls round to one, which really annoyed me, which was talking to animals. Now this is fine, except for the fact that it doesn't say the animals can talk back to you. I can talk to my animal. I have a cat. She doesn't understand what I'm saying. But then the second thing is...
already understand what you're saying.
Oh yeah, but not to my cat, I don't think. I think it's more tone she understands. But yeah. And then it just came down to animal botherer, more of a thing, because the cat can understand you. That's so what? There's a chance your cat can understand you anyway. In like,
I'm super animal botherer. I shall bother all your pets until they claw out your toes.
Always, when you go to the zoo, do they all walk away from you? The curse of the animal botherer. And yeah, pretty much that's the whole point of this, I think, or at least in my eyes, is not to follow the story, which I know I'm not that much of a Harry Potter fan like you, but I think it's literally just to see which house you're sorted into, and that's pretty much it, really, on Pottermore. It's a long-winded way to find out something that you could probably judge for yourself anyway.
Fair enough. Well, I think that just about does it for this week. I think we're going to need to wrap up here. Thank you everybody for listening. If you have any comments, either throw them to our YouTube channel, our email is below, or simply post them in the comments. Did I already say that? Yeah, I probably did. Alright, I've been Rowan.
And I've been Cameron.
Thank you for listening.